The cargo ship Rusty Bucket tumbled out of hyperspace like a drunk person falling off a bar stool. Captain Sarah Chen rubbed her eyes and looked at the navigation screen. Nothing looked familiar. The stars were wrong, the planets were in weird places, and her GPS was showing error messages in 3 different languages. "Well, that's not good," she said, taking a sip of cold coffee from a mug that said, "World's okayest captain." Engineer Rodriguez poked his head up from behind a control panel where he had been trying to fix the coffee machine for the past 6 hours. "Did we make the jump to Proxima Station?" "Nope. We're somewhere else entirely. Somewhere very, very else." Rodriguez shrugged and went back to hitting the coffee machine with a wrench. "As long as we're not dead, I guess it's fine." Communications Officer Park was busy taking selfies by the window. "Hey guys, check this out. There are like 1,000,000 giant crystal ships out there. They look pretty cool, I guess." Chen looked out the window and saw exactly what Park had described. Enormous ships that looked like they were made of purple and blue crystals surrounded them. Each ship was the size of a small city and covered in scary-looking weapons. The ships had arranged themselves in what was clearly a battle formation designed to make anyone looking at them wet their pants in terror. "Huh," Chen said. "That's different." The radio crackled to life with a voice that sounded like gravel being mixed in a blender. "Attention, primitive vessel. You have entered the sacred space of the Zephyrian Dominion. Prepare to face the wrath of Thekatar the Merciless. Your species will kneel before our might, or be reduced to cosmic dust." Chen picked up the radio microphone. "Hi there. Sorry to bother you. We're just passing through. Do you happen to know if there are any decent truck stops around here? We're getting low on snacks, and our coffee machine is broken." There was a long silence on the radio. "What?" the voice finally asked. "Truck stops. You know, places where travelers can get food, fuel, maybe use a clean bathroom. Our last stop was 3 systems ago, and Park ate all the good granola bars." "Hey, those were communal granola bars," Park said, not looking up from her phone where she was posting pictures of the crystal ships with captions like "Weird Space Traffic Jam" and "Probably late for work now." Admiral Thektar the Merciless stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the communications panel like it had personally insulted his mother. In his 300 years of conquering star systems, he had never encountered a response like this. Species usually responded to his arrival with screaming, begging, or at least some kind of fear. These creatures were asking about snacks. "Sir," his second-in-command whispered, "perhaps they do not understand the gravity of their situation." Thektar activated the radio again. "Foolish beings! I am Thektar the Merciless, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, destroyer of the weak, bringer of eternal darkness. You will surrender immediately or face annihilation." Chen turned to Rodriguez. "Does this guy sound like he's trying really hard to be scary to you?" "Yeah, he's got that whole dramatic villain thing going on. Very theatrical. I bet he practices those speeches in the mirror." Chen keyed the radio again. "Look, Mr. the Merciless, I'm sure you're very important and scary and all that, but we're just cargo haulers trying to make a living. We've got a schedule to keep, and frankly, this whole kneel before me thing is kind of holding us up. Are there tolls for using this space? Because if there are, we need receipts for our taxes." The alien admiral felt something he had never experienced before. It might have been confusion. It might have been an aneurysm. His reputation for striking fear into the hearts of entire civilizations was being treated like a customer service. "Complaint? Tolls?" he managed to ask. "Yeah, you know, fees for using the space lanes. Some systems charge for passage. Others have free highways but expensive parking. What's your setup here?" Park looked up from her phone. "Also, do you guys have Wi-Fi? I'm trying to upload these photos, but the signal out here is terrible." Thektar turned to his communications officer. "What is a Wi-Fi?" "I believe it is some form of primitive data transmission, sir." "Sir," another officer interrupted, Our scanners are detecting something unusual about their vessel. What kind of unusual? Well, sir, their ship appears to be held together with some kind of metallic tape, and their reactor is running on what our computers can only identify as caffeine and stubborn determination. Thektar looked at the readings. The human ship was indeed a disaster. It was old, patched with mismatched parts, and should have fallen apart years ago, but somehow it was not only functional, it had just completed a hyperspace jump that should have been impossible with their technology. How are they even alive? He muttered. Chen's voice came over the radio again. Hey, sorry to keep bothering you, but our engineer wants to know if you guys need any help with your ships. He noticed that your engines are running kind of rough. Might want to check your coolant levels. Rodriguez had indeed been looking at the crystal ships through a pair of binoculars. Those are some nice ships, but whoever built them doesn't know much about proper maintenance. Look at the way that exhaust is glowing. That's either a coolant leak or they're about to have a very bad day. Should we tell them? Chen asked. Might be the neighborly thing to do. Thektar was now experiencing what could only be described as a complete breakdown of everything he thought he knew about the universe. These primitive creatures were not only unafraid of his mighty fleet, they were offering mechanical advice. Get me a full scan of their species, he barked at his science officer. I want to know everything about these humans. Sir, preliminary scans indicate they are from a planet called Earth. They appear to be a relatively young species, but the data is confusing. Confusing how? Well, sir, they seem to have developed space travel despite having a complete disregard for safety protocols. Their ships regularly operate beyond safe parameters, their crews work in conditions that should kill them, and they appear to fix serious mechanical problems by hitting things with primitive tools. That's impossible. Yes, sir. Yet, here they are. Chen's voice interrupted his thoughts again. Listen, we really do need to get going. Our delivery is already late, and the customer gets cranky when we're behind schedule. Could you maybe point us toward the nearest space highway? We're looking for something that goes in the direction of the Orion Arm. Also, Park added over the radio, do any of your ships have good restaurants? We've been eating nothing but protein bars and instant noodles for 2 weeks. Thektar sat down heavily in his command chair. In all his years of conquest, he had reduced entire civilizations to rubble with nothing more than a threatening speech and an impressive fleet formation. These humans were treating his unstoppable war machine like a minor inconvenience and asking for dining recommendations. Sir, his first officer asked quietly, what are your orders? Thektar stared at the small, pathetic human ship floating in the middle of his battle formation like a lost tourist asking for directions. I need a moment to think. 3 hours later, the humans found themselves aboard the Zephyrian flagship. This was not by choice, but it was not exactly against their will either. The aliens had used something called a tractor beam to pull their ship into the landing bay. Chen had spent the entire time asking Rodriguez if they could build one of those for hauling broken-down cargo containers. The Zephyrians had expected the humans to be terrified when they were brought aboard the massive warship. Instead, Chen immediately asked if she could get the Wi-Fi password and whether the aliens had a bathroom she could use. Park started taking pictures of everything and asking guards to pose with her. Rodriguez found the ship's engine room within 10 minutes and started a conversation with the maintenance crew about proper lubrication techniques. This is not how conquest usually goes, muttered Commander Vexhall, who had been put in charge of processing the humans. The processing chamber was designed to be intimidating. The walls were black metal covered in sharp spikes. Red lights flashed ominously. The ceiling was too high and filled with shadows. Most species brought here would be reduced to gibbering terror within minutes. Chen sat at the interrogation table, filling out paperwork with the enthusiasm of someone renewing their driver's license. Question 15 asks about my species' technological level. Do you want me to put down what we're supposed to have, or what we actually have? because there's a big difference. What do you mean? Vexhall asked. Well, according to the manual, our hyperspace drive should only work within a 30 light-year radius. But Rodriguez hit it with a hammer last month, and now it goes wherever it wants. We're not really sure how. Vexhall made a note on his tablet. And question 16 asks about your species' military capabilities. Oh, we don't really have those. I mean, Earth has armies and stuff, but they're busy with Earth problems. The rest of us are just trying to make a living hauling cargo. Although Rodriguez did mount a nail gun on our ship after we had some trouble with space pirates. A nail gun? Yeah, it shoots nails. Works great for emergency repairs, too. Very practical. Meanwhile, in the ship's main corridor, Park was live streaming her tour of the alien vessel. Her audience had grown from 12 followers to 15, which she considered a major success. So this is the inside of an alien death ship, she said to her phone camera while walking past confused Zephyrian soldiers. The architecture is very dramatic. Lots of spikes and scary lighting. It's like someone watched too many horror movies and decided to base their interior design on them. The Wi-Fi is surprisingly good, though. One of the soldiers tried to look menacing by growling at her. Park turned the camera toward him. Oh, and here's one of the locals. Say hi, scary alien guy. The soldier, whose name was Krath and who had personally destroyed several planets, found himself waving awkwardly at the camera. He's actually pretty friendly once you get past all the growling and the armor made of sharp metal. I think it's a cultural thing. Down in the engine room, Rodriguez was having the time of his life. The Zephyrian engineers had never met anyone who understood machinery the way he did. More importantly, they had never met anyone who could fix things that were completely broken using nothing but spare parts and creative swearing. See, your problem is right here, Rodriguez said, pointing at a massive crystal formation that hummed with energy. This power coupling is vibrating at the wrong frequency. You need to either replace the harmonic dampener or just hit it with something heavy until it stops making that noise. Chief Engineer Zachmore looked at the readout. But that coupling has been making that noise for 40 years. Our engineers said it was within acceptable parameters. Your engineers don't know what they're talking about. Watch this. Rodriguez pulled out his trusty wrench and gave the crystal formation a sharp tap in exactly the right spot. The humming stopped immediately and the engine's efficiency increased by 12%. The Zephyrian engineers stared in amazement. How did you know to do that? Zachmore asked. Experience. I've been fixing broken stuff my whole life. You learn to listen to what the machine is telling you. This one was saying, please hit me with a wrench so I can work properly. Back in the processing chamber, Vexhall was beginning to understand why Admiral Thektar had been acting strange all day. These humans were completely impossible to process using standard conquest procedures. Question 20 asks about your species' religious beliefs, he said to Chen. Most humans believe in various things. I personally believe that any problem can be solved with enough coffee and determination. Also, that the universe has a sense of humor, and it's usually laughing at us. And question 21 asks about your species' greatest fears. Chen thought about this for a moment. Running out of coffee, having to fill out more paperwork than this, getting stuck in traffic, oh, and student loan debt. That one keeps a lot of people awake at night. What about death? Slavery? The destruction of your homeworld? Well, sure. Those would be bad, too. But they're not really everyday concerns, you know? It's hard to worry about cosmic annihilation when you're trying to figure out why the hyperspace drive makes that weird clicking noise. Vexhall set down his tablet. I need to speak with the Admiral. He found Thektar in his private chambers, staring out the window at the human cargo ship, which was still sitting in the landing bay. Several Zephyrian technicians were gathered around it, apparently fascinated by its construction. Sir, the processing is not going well, Vexhall reported. Define not going well. The humans are treating the entire procedure like a mild inconvenience. The female filled out all the conquest paperwork and asked if she could get copies for her records. The male found our engine room and has somehow improved our power output by 15%. The young one is broadcasting our ship's interior to something called social media and has convinced half our crew to appear in her videos. Thektar continued staring out the window. What do our psychologists say about them? Dr. Melthar examined their responses and concluded that humans appear to have evolved without a proper fear response. They seem to treat potentially lethal situations as minor problems to be solved rather than threats to be feared. That's impossible. Fear is the foundation of survival. Yes, sir. Dr. Melthar said the same thing. Then he asked to speak with the humans personally to understand how they function without dying constantly. Thektar watched as the human engineer emerged from underneath their ship covered in oil and grease, apparently having fixed something that was broken. The human looked satisfied with his work and immediately started examining one of the Zephyrian fighters parked nearby. Sir, Vexhal continued, what should we do with them? Thektar had conquered 1,000 worlds. He had reduced entire species to slavery. He had built an empire that spanned half the galaxy through fear and superior firepower. But he had never encountered a species that treated his empire like a minor travel delay. I don't know, he admitted. This was the first time in 300 years that Thektar the Merciless had admitted to not knowing something. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. Outside his window, Park was taking a selfie with a group of Zephyrian pilots, all of whom were trying to figure out how to use her phone camera. The sight of his elite warriors giggling over human technology made something inside Thektar's brain hurt. Sir, Vexhal asked, give me another hour to think about this. Word spread through the Zephyrian Empire faster than a computer virus in a college dorm. The news was simple and impossible to believe. There was a species that was not afraid of the mighty Zephyrian fleet. Even worse, they seemed to find the entire empire mildly inconvenient at best. On the conquered world of Meldavia, former Queen Issel received the news while working in the crystal mines that had once been her palace gardens. She dropped her mining tool and stared at the messenger. They asked for what? She whispered. Truck stops, your former majesty. The humans wanted to know if there were any good truck stops in Zephyrian space. Issel had ruled Meldavia for 60 years before the Zephyrians conquered her world. She had seen her armies destroyed, her cities burned, and her people enslaved. The sight of Thektar's fleet arriving in her system had made her weep with despair. These humans had asked for snacks. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, Chen had set up what she called a cultural exchange program in the cargo bay. This mainly involved selling coffee and expired Earth snacks to curious Zephyrian crew members who had never experienced caffeine before. This coffee is remarkable, said Lieutenant Vorth, who was currently experiencing his first caffeine high. It makes everything seem possible. I feel like I could conquer 3 star systems before lunch. Yeah, that's normal, Chen said, handing him a second cup. Just wait until it wears off. Then you'll need more coffee to feel human again. Well, not human exactly, but you know what I mean. Park had become something of a celebrity among the younger Zephyrian crew members. Her social media account, which she had renamed Touring the Galaxy with Park, had grown to over 100 followers. Most of them were aliens who had never seen humans before and were fascinated by her complete lack of concern about being aboard a warship. Today's episode is about alien food, she announced to her phone camera while standing in the ship's cafeteria. So far, I've tried something called protein paste, which tastes like cardboard mixed with sadness, and nutritional gel, which is somehow worse. The local cuisine is very minimalist. I give it 2 stars out of 5. Points for efficiency, minus points for flavor. A group of Zephyrian soldiers had gathered behind her to watch the filming. They had never considered that their food might be bad. It was food. It provided nutrients. That seemed sufficient. What do humans eat? Asked Sergeant Klex. Oh, all kinds of stuff. Pizza, hamburgers, tacos, ice cream, food that actually tastes good. Eating should be enjoyable, not just functional. The concept of food being enjoyable was completely foreign to the Zephyrians. They ate to survive, not for pleasure. The idea that meals could be fun was revolutionary. Rodriguez had become the most popular person on the ship among the engineering crew. In just 2 days, he had fixed 17 different systems that had been broken for months or even years. His methods were unorthodox, but they worked. The trick to fixing anything, he explained to a group of fascinated alien engineers, is to understand what it wants to do and then help it do that thing. This plasma conduit wants to carry energy smoothly from point A to point B. Right now, it's fighting against this badly designed connector, so we fix the connector and everyone's happy. Chief Engineer Zach Moore was taking notes on everything Rodriguez said. But our manuals say the connector is installed correctly. Your manuals are wrong. Whoever wrote them never actually worked on one of these ships. They just designed it on a computer and assumed it would work perfectly in real life. This was another revolutionary concept for the Zephyrians. Their society was built on rigid hierarchies and unquestioning obedience to authority. The idea that official manuals could be wrong was almost unthinkable. So what do you do when the manual is wrong? Zach Moore asked. You ignore the manual and fix the problem anyway. The universe doesn't care what the manual says. Physics is physics. News of the humans continued to spread throughout Zephyrian space. On the prison world of Thraxis, former President Jaylock heard that the humans had asked for directions to the nearest space highway. In the slave camps of Vorthon, workers whispered that the humans had complained about the lack of decent restaurants. In the sector, the psychological effect was profound. For 1,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had maintained control through fear and the promise of swift, terrible punishment for any resistance. Their reputation for merciless conquest was their greatest weapon. But how do you maintain a reputation? For being terrifying when someone treats you like a minor traffic inconvenience? Admiral Tektar was discovering this problem firsthand. He had called a meeting of his senior staff to discuss what to do with the humans. The meeting was not going well. Sir, perhaps we should simply destroy them and be done with it, suggested Commander Vexhal. That would normally be the logical course of action. Tektar agreed. But the problem is that news of their attitude has already spread throughout the Empire. If we destroy them now, it will look like we were threatened by 3 cargo haulers who weren't even trying to resist us. But, sir, they are just 3 individuals. How much damage could they do to our reputation? As if summoned by his question, Park's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. She had somehow gained access to the internal broadcast network and was giving her followers a tour of the bridge. And this is where they control the whole ship, her voice said cheerfully. It's very dark and dramatic, with lots of flashing, lights and scary music playing in the background. The command chair is way too big and has spikes on it for some reason. I think it's supposed to be intimidating, but it just looks uncomfortable. Tektar closed his eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. Sir, the communications officer said, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Word about the humans has reached the subjugated worlds. Some of the conquered populations are asking questions. What kind of questions? Questions like, if humans can treat the Empire like this, how scary can it really be? And why are we so afraid of people who get confused by coffee shop logistics? This was exactly what Tektar had been afraid of. The Zephyrian Empire controlled thousands of worlds and trillions of beings through carefully maintained fear. If that fear broke down, the entire empire could collapse within months. What about our psychological warfare division? Can they contain the information? Sir, the humans' social media broadcasts are being transmitted on frequencies we didn't know existed. Their communication technology is primitive but surprisingly effective. Also, our troops have started following the human, female's videos. Lieutenant Vorth has shared her coffee tutorial with half the ship. Tektar felt a headache forming behind his eyes. Get me a full psychological profile of these humans. I need to understand how their minds work. An hour later, Dr. Melthar presented his findings to the Admiral's staff. The Zephyrian chief psychologist looked like he had been awake for days and had consumed far too much coffee. "The humans are fascinating," he began. "They appear to have evolved on a world where nearly everything is trying to kill them. Yet they have developed a psychological response that treats mortal danger as a problem to be solved rather than a reason to panic." "Explain," Thektar demanded. "Their homeworld, Earth, is a death trap. Massive storms, earthquakes, predatory animals, poisonous plants, extreme weather, and countless other hazards. Most species would have gone extinct or never developed intelligence. Instead, humans developed the ability to remain calm under pressure and find practical solutions to impossible problems. That explains their lack of fear, but not their complete disregard for our authority." "Ah, that's even more interesting. Human society is based on the concept of individual liberty and questioning authority. They are literally raised from childhood to distrust anyone who claims to have power over them without earning it. Our standard intimidation tactics actually make them less likely to cooperate, not more." Vexhal leaned forward. "Are you saying that threatening them makes them more stubborn?" "Exactly. When a human encounters someone trying to dominate them, through fear, their instinctive response is to become sarcastic and uncooperative. It's a species-wide survival trait." Thektar stared at the report. "So we have encountered a species that evolution has specifically designed to be immune to our conquest methods." "In essence, yes, sir." The room fell silent. Outside, they could hear Rodriguez explaining to someone how to properly adjust plasma, flow regulators using nothing but a wrench and creative profanity. "Sir," Vexhal said quietly, "what do we do now?" The Zephyrian High Command made their decision after 3 days of debate, 17 cups of human coffee, and 1 complete mental breakdown by the Minister of Psychological Warfare. They would make an example of humanity by attacking Earth directly. The plan was simple: destroy the human homeworld in front of the entire galaxy, broadcast the annihilation across every communication channel in the Empire, and restore their reputation for unstoppable terror. Supreme Admiral Thektar led the largest fleet in Zephyrian history toward Earth. 3,000 warships, each capable of cracking a planet's crust, arranged in the traditional formation of doom. Every weapon was charged, every crew member was prepared for glorious battle, and every camera was ready to record humanity's final moments. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system and immediately received an automated message from something called Sol System Traffic Control. "Welcome to Sol System. All commercial and military vessels, please proceed to designated parking zones based on ship classification. Parking Zone 1 is for vessels under 1 kilometer. Zone 2 is for ships between 1 and 5 kilometers. Zone 3 is for anything bigger. Please maintain safe following distances and observe posted speed limits. Have a nice day." Admiral Thektar stared at the communications panel. "They want us to park?" "Sir," his navigation officer said carefully, "it appears that Earth's traffic control system has classified our invasion fleet as really big ships that need somewhere to sit." "Attention, Earth," Thektar broadcast, on all frequencies using his most terrifying voice. "This is Admiral Thektar the Merciless. You have harbored the humans who have insulted the mighty Zephyrian Empire. Prepare for total annihilation." The response came back immediately in a cheerful female voice. "Hi there, I'm Sarah from Sol Traffic Control. I've got you down for 3,000 ships, total length approximately 15,000 kilometers. You're going to need parking zone 7, which is behind the moon. Please follow the blue navigation beacons and maintain a speed of no more than 50,000 kilometers per hour in the inner system. Also, just so you know, we're having some construction work done on the main space lanes this week, so expect delays." Commander Vexhal looked at his tactical display. Blue lights had indeed appeared, leading them toward the far side of Earth's moon. "Sir, are we following the parking instructions?" No, we are not following the parking instructions. We are here to destroy their planet. Understood, sir. But the navigation beacons are really well designed, very user-friendly. The fleet moved toward Earth, ignoring the traffic control system and preparing for battle. This turned out to be a mistake, because Earth's approach to planetary defense was exactly as practical and unconventional as everything else humans did. Instead of meeting them with a defensive fleet or desperate surrender broadcasts, Earth responded by completely ignoring the invasion force and going about its normal business. Ships launched from the planet carrying cargo and passengers. Space stations continued their regular operations. A group of human children on a school field trip to Luna Base pressed their faces against the windows to watch the pretty crystal ships. Sir, the tactical officer reported, Earth's defense grid has not activated. They don't appear to have noticed that we're invading them. That's impossible. We're the largest fleet in galactic history. Yes, sir, but according to our scans, Earth's military forces are all busy with something called terrestrial operations. They appear to be fighting each other over various political disagreements. Admiral Thektar felt his sanity beginning to crack. They're fighting each other while we're invading them? Yes, sir. Also, sir, we're receiving a communication from Luna Base. Put it through. A young human voice came over the speakers. She sounded maybe 17 years old and spoke with the casual authority of someone who had never been told that talking to alien invaders was supposed to be scary. Hey there, Crystal Ship people. This is Intern Kelly from Luna Base Systems. Control. Just wanted to let you know that you're drifting into the shipping lanes between Earth and Mars. Could you maybe move about 50,000 kilometers to your left? We've got a cargo convoy coming through in about an hour, and your ships are blocking their route. We are here to destroy your planet, Thektar roared into the communicator. Oh, okay. Well, could you maybe do that after the convoy passes? The cargo ships don't have very good steering, and if they hit one of your ships, it'll mess up everyone's insurance paperwork, Vexhal whispered. Sir, she's treating our invasion fleet like a traffic jam. I can hear that, Commander. Thektar tried a different approach. Human child, do you not understand that your species is about to be exterminated? Yeah, I heard you the first time. Look, I'm just an intern, okay? I don't make policy decisions about extermination and stuff, but I do make decisions about space traffic, and you guys are really messing up the flow here. Could you please just move a little bit to the left? The Admiral realized he was arguing about parking spaces with a teenage intern while commanding the most powerful military force in galactic history. Something was very wrong with this scenario. Sir, another officer interrupted, we have a problem. What, now? One of our dreadnoughts has lost power. The Void Destroyer is drifting toward Luna Base. On the main screen, they watched as the massive Zephyrian warship slowly tumbled toward the human moon base. This should have been catastrophic for both ships. Instead, a small human maintenance vessel approached the dreadnought and extended what appeared to be a towing cable. Attention drifting crystal ship, came a voice over the radio. This is Luna Base Recovery. Looks like you've got some engine trouble. We'll tow you to the repair station. Try not to worry about the bill. We've got good rates for emergency service. They're going to tow the Void Destroyer? Vexahal asked in amazement. They watched as the tiny human ship, which was maybe 1,000th, the size of the dreadnought, somehow managed to get a towing cable attached and began pulling the massive warship toward Luna Base. The Void Destroyer's crew was too shocked to resist. Sir, the communications officer said, Luna Base is asking if our other ships need any mechanical assistance. They're offering repair services, refueling, and something called duty-free shopping. That's when things got really strange. A human civilian transport approached the fleet broadcasting on standard greeting frequencies. Hello there, visitors. Welcome to the Sol system. I'm Captain Martinez with Solar Tours. Would your crews be interested in a guided tour of the inner planets? We're running a special this week. 3 planets for the price of 2. And we throw in the asteroid belt for free. Very educational. They want to give us a tour? Thektar asked weakly. Sir, Approximately 30 of our ships are requesting permission to take the tour, his communications officer reported. The crews say they've never seen an alien star system before, and they're curious about human architecture. Absolutely not. But it was too late. Several of his ships were already following the human tour guide toward Venus, their crews broadcasting excitement about seeing new worlds. The mighty Zephyrian invasion fleet was turning into a tourist expedition. The final blow to Thektar's sanity came when intern Kelly from Luna Base called back. "Crystal Ship Admiral Guy, I just talked to my supervisor and she says you can't destroy Earth today because we haven't filed the proper environmental impact paperwork with the Solar Safety Commission. Planet destruction requires at least 30 days' notice and a full ecological survey. But if you want, I can put you on the waiting list for next month. How does the 15th sound? Admiral Thektar, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, destroyer of civilizations, bringer of cosmic terror, found himself checking his calendar to see if he was free on the 15th. Sir, Vexhal said gently, perhaps we should reconsider our approach to this species. Yes, Thektar said in a voice that suggested his spirit had been completely broken. Perhaps we should. The revolution began with a news interview. Park, who had somehow gained access to the Zephyrian fleet's main communication array, was live-streaming what she thought was just another casual conversation with Admiral Thektar. Her follower count had grown to over 50,000 beings across the galaxy, most of whom were subjugated aliens who had never seen anyone talk to their oppressors so casually. "So, Admiralty," Park said, holding her phone up to record while sitting in what had once been the most feared command center in the galaxy, "tell my viewers about your empire. What's your basic deal here?" Thektar, who had not slept in 3 days and had consumed enough human coffee to kill a small elephant, stared at the camera with the hollow eyes of a being whose entire worldview had collapsed. We conquer worlds," he said automatically. "We bring order to chaos. We eliminate the weak and make the galaxy stronger through our dominance." "Okay, but why though? What's the point of all that conquering? Are you guys happy doing this?" The question hit Thektar like a physical blow. In 300 years of conquest, no one had ever asked him if he was happy. The concept of happiness had never been part of Zephyrian military philosophy. Happiness is irrelevant. We serve the Empire. The Empire serves order. That sounds super depressing. Also, can we talk about your environmental impact? Like how much energy does it take to run 3,000 massive spaceships? Have you guys ever considered renewable energy? Solar power is getting really efficient these days. Across the galaxy, beings who had lived in terror of the Zephyrian Empire for generations watched their most feared enemy being gently interviewed about his carbon footprint by a human, who seemed genuinely concerned about his well-being. On the conquered world of Meldavia, former Queen Issel watched the broadcast with growing amazement. The human was treating Thektar like a misguided person who needed career counseling, not a cosmic tyrant who had destroyed countless civilizations. "Admiral, when's the last time you took a vacation?" Park asked. "You look really stressed. Have you considered therapy? My cousin Jake went through a really dark period where he was super aggressive and controlling, but therapy helped him work through his issues." What is therapy? It's when you talk to someone about your problems and feelings. It helps you understand why you do the things you do. Like, why do you feel the need to dominate everyone you meet? Did someone hurt you when you were little? Are you trying to prove something to your parents? The interview was being broadcast live to every screen in Zephyrian space. Trillions of conquered beings watched their terrifying overlord admit that he didn't know what therapy was, and that he had never considered whether his life choices made him happy. "I think maybe you guys just need some better hobbies," Park continued. "Conquering worlds seems like it would get really boring after a while. Have you ever tried art, music, cooking? When's the last time you did something just because you enjoyed it?" Thektar opened his mouth to answer, then realized he couldn't remember the last time he had done anything for enjoyment. His entire existence was duty, conquest, and the expansion of Zephyrian power. I don't know. That's when the revolution truly began. Not with violence or heroic speeches, but with the simple realization that their oppressors were just deeply unhappy people who had never learned to find joy in life. On Meldavia, Queen Issel stood up from her mining equipment and walked toward the Zephyrian overseer who had been guarding her work crew. "Commander Zalox," she said calmly, "when's the last time you were happy?" The commander, who had been watching the interview on his portable screen, looked up with confusion. "What? Happy, content, satisfied with your life. When's the last time you felt that way?" Zalox had never been asked this question either. He thought about it for a long moment. I achieved a commendation for efficient slave management last year. That was satisfying. But were you happy? Did it bring you joy? I don't understand the question. Around the galaxy, similar conversations were starting. Conquered beings, inspired by Park's casual approach to questioning authority, began asking their oppressors simple questions about life satisfaction and personal fulfillment. The psychological effect was devastating to the Zephyrian occupation forces. Back on the flagship, Park was wrapping up her interview. "Admiral T, I think you should consider taking some time off. Maybe visit Earth. We've got great beaches, good food, and lots of therapy options. You seem like you could use a break from all this conquering stuff." That actually sounds pleasant," Thektar admitted. "See? You just need to expand your horizons a little. Life's too short to spend it being angry and scary all the time." The broadcast ended, but the damage was done. Within hours, reports were flooding in from across the Empire. Zephyrian commanders were experiencing what their psychologists could only describe as existential crises. Soldiers were questioning the point of their missions. Some were laying down their weapons and asking conquered populations for restaurant recommendations. On the prison world of Thraxis, former President Jalok approached his Zephyrian guard with a simple question. "Sergeant Krex, what do you want to do with your life?" I want to serve the Empire," Krex replied automatically. "No, I mean, what do you want to do? If you could do anything, what would make you happy?" Krex thought about this for a long time. "I always wanted to learn how to cook," he finally admitted. "My grandmother used to make these wonderful soup analogs, but she died before she could teach me the recipe." "Why don't you learn how to cook then?" "Because I'm a soldier. Soldiers don't cook." "Says who?" The question hung in the air like a revelation. Says who, indeed? The collapse of the Zephyrian Empire happened faster than anyone thought possible. It wasn't destroyed by superior firepower or strategic brilliance. It fell apart because Park's interview had asked the one question that authoritarian systems can't answer. Why are you doing this, and does it make you happy? Within a week, Zephyrian forces across the galaxy were abandoning their posts. Some returned to their homeworld to figure out what they actually wanted to do with their lives. Others stayed on the worlds they had conquered, but as residents rather than occupiers. A surprising number enrolled in cooking classes. Admiral Thektar formally dissolved the Zephyrian Empire in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. He announced that he was retiring from military service to pursue what he called personal growth and possibly learning to paint. "I want to thank the human park for helping me realize that I have been deeply unhappy for several centuries," he said in his final address. "I encourage all former Imperial forces to take some time to consider what actually brings them joy. The galaxy has enough suffering without us adding to it deliberately." The ceremony was interrupted when Rodriguez finally managed to get the coffee machine on the rusty bucket working properly. The celebration that followed involved most of the former Zephyrian fleet and lasted for 3 days. Chen, meanwhile, had finally found directions to the nearest truck stop. It was now located in what used to be the Zephyrian Administrative Center for the Outer Rim territories, The new management served excellent coffee and had very clean bathrooms. "So," Chen said to Park as they prepared to finally deliver their cargo, "how does it feel to accidentally overthrow a galactic empire?" Park looked up from her phone, where she was editing a video titled, "How I Accidentally Started a Revolution by Asking About Therapy." "It was okay, I guess. Kind of surreal. My follower count is up to 2 million now, which is cool. And Rodriguez, how does it feel to know that your mechanical advice helped liberate thousands of worlds?" Rodriguez emerged from under the ship, wiping his hands on a rag. "The coffee machine is finally working properly," he announced. "Want some?" "That's not what I asked." "Oh, the liberation thing? That's nice. But seriously, you should try this coffee. I think I finally got the temperature regulation perfect." 6 months later, Chen received a letter from Admiral Thektar. He had opened a small cafe on a peaceful world in the former empire. The letter included a photo of him wearing an apron and smiling while serving soup to customers. He looked genuinely happy for the first time in centuries. "Thank you for teaching me that there are better ways to live," the letter said. Also, Rodriguez was right about the engine coolant issue. "My ship runs much more efficiently now." Chen posted the letter on the bulletin board of their new favorite truck stop, right next to thank you notes from 17 other former galactic conquerors who had discovered the joy of pursuing their actual interests instead of trying to dominate the universe. Park's social media account had become required viewing for several interstellar diplomacy courses. Her casual approach to questioning authority had been dubbed the Park Method and was being studied by political scientists across the galaxy. Rodriguez had written a technical manual called Basic Ship Maintenance, a common-sense guide to not dying in space. It had become the best-selling engineering text in 12 star systems. As for the Rusty Bucket, it continued hauling cargo across the galaxy, completely unchanged except for the coffee machine, which finally worked correctly. The crew remained, magnificently unimpressed by their accidental role in galactic history. "You know what?" Chen said, as they prepared for another routine cargo. The massive crystal towers of the Galactic Sports Federation stretched into the purple sky of Nexus Prime. Inside the tallest tower, alien beings from across the galaxy sat around a table that could hold a small city. They were the Council, the ones who decided which species could join their ancient competitions. Council leader Zixith clicked his 4 arms together as he read the latest application. His insect-like head tilted as he processed the information. "Humans," he said, his voice buzzing like a broken machine. "From a planet called Earth." The other council members started making noises. Some laughed, others hissed, and a few made sounds that had no Earth equivalent. The Zentorians, beings made of pure light and energy, flickered with amusement. Their leader, Bright Star of Morning, spoke without moving any mouth. "These meat creatures think they can compete with us?" "Look at their physical data," said War Chief Graktor of the Vorthak Empire. He stood 8 feet tall, covered in armor-like skin with 4 massive arms. "They have only 1 heart, 1! How do they even stay alive?" The smallest member of the council, Elder Pip of the Pixari, squeaked from his floating chair. "Their bones are made of calcium. Calcium! My people's bones are crystallized starlight. These humans are weaker than our children." Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the visitor's chair, trying not to show how nervous she felt. She was Earth's top sports scientist, chosen to represent humanity's application to join the Federation. Around her, beings that looked like living rocks, floating gas clouds, and metal spiders continued to mock her species. "Council leader," Sarah said, standing up, "if I may speak?" Zixth waved 1 arm. "Very well, human. Tell us why your weak species deserves to compete with the greatest athletes in the galaxy." Sarah took a deep breath. "We may not be the strongest, or the fastest, but we learn. We adapt. We never give up." This caused even more laughter. Bright Star of Morning's light grew brighter with amusement. "Adapt? Child, my people have been playing these sports for 50,000 years. We have perfected every technique, mastered every strategy. What could your infant species possibly teach us? We don't know yet, Sarah admitted, but we'd like the chance to find out. The council members looked at each other. Finally, Zixith spoke. Very well. We will grant your species probationary membership. You will compete in our 5 greatest challenges. When you fail, and you will fail quickly, your species will be banned from applying again for 1,000 years. What are the 5 challenges? Sarah asked. War Chief Graktor counted on his 4 hands. The strength trials where the mighty prove their power, the speed competitions where the swift claim victory, the endurance challenges where the resilient survive, the strategy games where the intelligent dominate, and finally the survival gauntlet, where champions are forged or destroyed. Your first competition will be the strength trials on my homeworld, Graktor continued. You will face our greatest champion, Supreme Lifter Krakthul. He has never been defeated. He once lifted a mountain to save a village. Sarah nodded. When do we start? 1 Earth month, Zixith said. Use this time to prepare your strongest warrior. Though I warn you, no species has ever won their first trial. Most withdraw before the competition ends. The council session ended, and Sarah found herself outside the Crystal Towers. Her teammate, Colonel Jake Morrison, was waiting for her. Jake was a former Marine who now coached Earth's Olympic athletes. How did it go? Jake asked. About as well as expected, Sarah said. They think we're jokes. Weak, stupid jokes. Good, Jake said, surprising her. Good, Jake smiled. Sarah, I've watched the competition videos. These aliens are incredible athletes, but they've been doing the same things the same way for thousands of years. They're strong, fast, and smart, but they're also predictable. They walk toward their transport ship. What do you mean? Sarah asked. I mean, they've never seen human creativity. They've never seen us work as a team. They've never seen us refuse to quit when logic says we should. Jake stopped walking and looked at her. They're about to learn what makes humans special. Back on Earth, the news of humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Sports Federation spread quickly. Most people were excited, but many were worried. The aliens seemed impossibly powerful. Marcus Rodriguez was not worried. The powerlifter from Texas had been training his whole life for moments like this. When he saw the videos of Vorthak athletes lifting massive weights, he didn't feel scared. He felt curious. They're strong, he told his training partner, but they're just using brute force. No technique, no strategy, just raw power. Marcus, that Vorthak champion lifted 50 tons, his partner said. You've never lifted more than 2,000 pounds. Marcus grinned. I've never needed to lift 50 tons, but if I have to, I'll find a way. Similar conversations were happening around the world. Captain Lisa Park, a test pilot, studied the speed competitions. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a game theory expert, analyzed the strategy games. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a survival specialist, examined footage from the survival gauntlet. Each human expert reached the same conclusion. The aliens were better at everything, but they were also limited by their own success. They had become so good at winning that they had stopped learning how to improve. 1 week before the strength trials, the human team gathered at a training facility in Colorado. Sarah looked at her 5 champions and felt a mix of pride and terror. Okay, everyone, she said. Let's be honest, we're probably going to lose. These aliens have been competing for longer than human civilization has existed. They're stronger, faster, and smarter than us in almost every way. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Marcus spoke up. So what? So what? Sarah repeated. So what if they're stronger? So what if they're faster? So what if they're smarter? Marcus stood up. I've been the underdog my whole life. Every competition, someone was supposed to be better than me. Sometimes they were. But I kept showing up, kept trying, Kept learning. Captain Park nodded. He's right. When I was learning to fly, the computer simulation said I would crash. The instructor said I didn't have the right reflexes. But I kept flying because I wanted to touch the stars. Dr. Tanaka adjusted her glasses. In game theory, there's a concept called emergence. Sometimes, when you combine simple rules in new ways, you get results that nobody expected. Maybe that's what humans are. An emergence. Dr. Vasquez smiled grimly. I've survived in places that should have killed me, not because I'm the toughest, but because I'm too stubborn to die. Jake looked around the room. That's it. That's our advantage. We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Sarah felt something she hadn't felt since the council meeting. Hope. All right, team. Let's go show the galaxy what humans can do. The transport ship lifted off from Earth, carrying 5 humans toward a competition they had almost no chance of winning. Behind them, billions of people watched and waited, hoping that somehow their species would prove they belonged among the stars. The Vorthak homeworld grew larger in their viewports. Soon, the strength trials would begin, and the galaxy would see what happened when humans refused to accept the impossible. The arena on Vorthak Prime was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It stretched for miles under a red sky, with massive stone platforms arranged in a circle. Each platform held weights that would make Earth's strongest machines look like toys. The crowd filled stands that rose so high they disappeared into the clouds. 50 billion beings across the galaxy watched through quantum broadcasts. Most were here to see the humans fail spectacularly. Welcome to the strength trials. War Chief Graktor's voice boomed across the arena. Today, we separate the mighty from the weak. Marcus stood with the other competitors and tried not to feel small. Next to him, Supreme Lifter Krakthul looked like a walking tank. The Vorthak champion's 4 arms were each thicker than Marcus's entire body. His armor-like skin had scars from lifting weights that could crush buildings. You are the human? Krakthul asked, looking down at Marcus. You seem tiny. Size isn't everything, Marcus replied, trying to sound confident. Krakthul laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Here, size is the only thing that matters. The other competitors were just as intimidating. The Golem delegate looked like a living mountain. The hive mind representative was actually 12 insect creatures working together as one. The aquatic, Empire's champion moved inside a water suit that made him look like a liquid metal giant. First weight 50 tons, Graktor announced. A massive crystalline pillar rose from the center platform. It glowed with inner light and hummed with energy. 50 tons was more than most Earth vehicles weighed. Krakthul stepped forward first. He wrapped his 4 arms around the crystal and lifted it over his head like it was made of foam. The crowd roared approval. He held it for 10 seconds, then gently placed it back down. The Golem delegate went next. Instead of lifting with his arms, he used some kind of gravity control to make the crystal float. He spun it in the air like a toy before. Setting it down, one by one, each competitor lifted the crystal easily. When Marcus's turn came, the arena fell silent. This was what everyone had come to see. The weak human would try and fail, providing entertainment for the galaxy. Marcus walked to the crystal. Up close, it was even more massive than it looked. He placed his hands on it and tried to lift. It didn't budge. He tried again, putting his whole body into it. Nothing. The crowd started laughing. Some aliens were making bets on how quickly the human would give up. But Marcus didn't give up. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone. He walked around the crystal, studying it from every angle. He ran his hands along its surface, feeling for grip points. He tested how it balanced. "What is he doing?" someone in the crowd asked. "I think he's thinking," another voice replied, sounding confused. Marcus found what he was looking for. The crystal wasn't perfectly balanced. One end was slightly heavier than the other. He positioned himself at the lighter end, got into a deadlift stance. and used every technique he had learned in 20 years of powerlifting. The crystal moved. Just an inch, but it moved. The laughter stopped. Marcus adjusted his grip, used his legs, his back, his whole body working together. Slowly, impossibly, the 50-ton crystal rose into the air. He didn't lift it over his head like Thule had, but he got it waist high and held it there for the required 10 seconds. When he set it down, the arena was completely silent. "Second weight, 100 tons, Graktor announced, sounding less confident than before. The second weight was a block of neutronium, the densest material in the galaxy. Again, each competitor lifted it with apparent ease. Again, Marcus studied it first. This time, he did something even stranger. He called his human teammates over. "What are you doing?" Dr. Chen asked. "I can't lift this alone," Marcus said. "But the rules don't say I have to lift alone. They just say the weight has to be lifted," Sarah smiled. "Team lifting isn't cheating. It's just creative interpretation." The human team worked together. Marcus anchored the lift while the others provided support and leverage. They used principles of physics that the aliens had never applied to strength competitions. They turned individual effort into group achievement. The crowd watched in amazement as 5 humans lifted what one alien lifted alone. "This is unusual," Thule said, no longer sounding dismissive. The weights continued to increase. 200 tons, 500 tons, 1,000 tons. Each time, the alien competitors used their natural abilities or technologies. Each time. The humans used teamwork, technique, and creativity. At 2,000 tons, some competitors started to struggle. The aquatic champion's water suit began to crack under the pressure. 2 of the hive mind's 12 bodies collapsed from strain. The humans were struggling too, but they adapted. They built makeshift pulley systems from equipment in the arena. They used leverage and mechanical advantage. They turned the strength trials into an engineering challenge. 5,000 tons, Graktor announced. The final weight, only 3. Competitors remained. Thule, the golem delegate, and the human team. The final weight was a sphere of compressed star matter. It was so heavy that the platform beneath it cracked. Thule went first. He strained with all 4 arms, his armor-like skin turning darker with effort. He managed to lift the sphere, but only for 3 seconds before dropping it with a crash that shook the entire arena. The golem delegate tried next. His gravity control flickered and failed. The star matter was too dense, too heavy even for his advanced technology. He couldn't lift it at all. The crowd held its breath as the human team approached the final weight. Marcus looked at his teammates. "We can't lift this. It's impossible." "Since when has impossible stopped us?" Captain Park asked. Dr. Tanaka was already calculating angles and forces. "If we can't lift it, maybe we can move it differently." Dr. Vasquez pointed to the arena's structure. "Those support beams. If we could create a lever system." The human team spent 20 minutes building what could only be described as a medieval siege engine mixed with modern engineering. They used everything available in the arena: support cables, platform edges, even their own body weight as counterbalances. The aliens watched in fascination. They had never seen competitors modify the arena itself. "Are they allowed to do this?" someone asked. Graktor checked the rules. The rules had been written thousands of years ago and had never anticipated anything like this. "There is no rule against it," he admitted. The human contraption was ugly, complicated, and looked like it might fall apart at any moment. But when Marcus pulled the lever, something incredible happened. The 5,000-ton sphere of star matter rose into the air. It didn't rise smoothly or gracefully. It wobbled and swayed, held up by cables and counterweights and human determination. But it rose, and it stayed up for the required 10 seconds. When it came down, the arena exploded in noise. Not laughter this time, but something that had never been heard at a strength trial before. Confused, amazed, respectful applause. Krakthul stared at the humans with his 4 eyes wide. "How did you do that?" Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. "We couldn't match your strength, so we multiplied ours." "Multiplied?" "Teamwork," Sarah explained. "When humans work together, we become stronger than the sum of our parts." Graktor's voice was uncertain as he announced the results. The humans have completed all 5 lifts. By the ancient rules of the strength trials, they are declared winners. The word winners seemed to surprise him as much as everyone else. In the stands, beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia sat in stunned silence. The humans hadn't just won, they had changed what winning meant. They had turned individual, competition into team effort, brute force into clever engineering, and tradition into innovation. As the human team left the arena, Krakthul followed them. "Humans," he called out, Would you teach my people these techniques?" Marcus turned back and smiled. "Sure, but you'll have to learn to work together first." The Vorthak champion looked at his 4 arms as if seeing them for the first time. "Work together," he repeated slowly. "What a strange idea." Back on Earth, billions of people watched the news reports in disbelief. Humanity had won their first galactic competition. But more importantly, they had done it by being completely, uniquely human. The speed competitions were next, and the galaxy was starting to realize that these strange creatures from Earth might be more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The racing complex in the Centaurian Nebula floated in zero gravity, surrounded by stars and cosmic dust that glittered like diamonds. Captain Lisa Park had seen beautiful things during her years as a test pilot, but nothing compared to this. Massive rings of light marked the race course, stretching across space for millions of miles. Her ship looked pathetic next to the other competitors. The Screecher vessels were sleek curves of living metal that seemed to bend light around them. The Centaurian craft appeared to be made of pure energy, shifting and flowing like liquid starlight. The hive mind had built something that looked like a mechanical flower, with thousands of small racing pods connected by streams of data. "Human pilot," came a voice that sounded like wind through caves. "I am Fleetwing Shriektar of the Screecher. Dominion, I have won this race for the past 50 years. Lisa looked at the bat-like alien through her ship's window. Fleetwing was beautiful in an alien way, with wings that sparkled with their own light and eyes like black holes. "Nice to meet you," Lisa said. "I'm Captain Park. This is my first galactic race." Fleetwing made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your first race will be your last race, little human. When the course begins, you will see speeds that your slow species cannot even imagine." "We'll see," Lisa said calmly. The race had 3 parts. First, a sprint through the asteroid maze, where pilots had to navigate between massive spinning rocks while going as fast as possible. Second, the precision course around 3 neutron stars where one mistake meant death. Third, the endurance run across an entire solar system where most pilots ran out of fuel or broke down from exhaustion. "Racers, prepare for launch." The voice came from everywhere at once, spoken by the Centaurian race coordinator. Lisa checked her instruments one more time. Her ship was primitive compared to the others, but it was built with human engineering. It was tough, reliable, and designed to be repaired in space if needed. Beginning sprint course in 3, 2, 1, go! The other ships vanished. Literally, they moved so fast that they became streaks of light shooting through the asteroid field. Lisa's ship accelerated steadily, but compared to the others, she might as well have been standing still. She watched her instruments as the other pilots blazed past asteroids, threading gaps that seemed impossible. Fleetwing's ship moved like liquid lightning, flowing around obstacles without slowing down. The Centaurian craft phased through solid rock like it wasn't there. But as Lisa made her way through the course, she noticed something interesting. The other pilots were taking the most direct routes, the obvious paths through the asteroids. They were fast, but they weren't thinking ahead. Lisa had spent years learning to fly in Earth's atmosphere, where pilots had to deal with weather, mechanical problems, and limited fuel. She knew how to plan for the long term, instead of trying. To match the other ship's speed, she focused on efficiency. She used the asteroid's gravity to slingshot herself forward, saving fuel and energy. She took routes that seemed longer but actually saved time by avoiding the most crowded areas. By the time she finished the sprint course, she was dead last, but she had used only half her fuel while the other ships had burned through most of theirs. Beginning precision course, the coordinator announced. The neutron stars were terrifying. Each one was a collapsed star so dense that a teaspoon of its material would weigh 1 billion tons on Earth. They warped space around them, creating gravity fields that could tear ships apart. The other pilots relied on their advanced navigation, systems, and reflexes. They calculated the perfect trajectories and flew them with machine-like precision. Lisa did something different. She flew by feel. She had learned to pilot in Earth's chaotic atmosphere, where weather could change in seconds and no two flights were ever the same. She had developed something the aliens had lost: intuition. As she approached the first neutron, "Star!" her instruments screamed warnings. The gravity was pulling her ship apart. Her shields were failing. Any sensible pilot would slow down or change course. Instead, Lisa used the star's gravity like a tool. She let it grab her ship and whip her around, using the neutron star's immense mass to accelerate her far beyond what her engines could manage alone. It was dangerous. It was crazy. It was completely human. She shot past 3 other competitors who were flying their careful, calculated routes. Their superior technology couldn't help them because they had never learned to take risks. "How is the human gaining on us?" Fleetwing asked over the communication channel. "Her ship is primitive." "She's not flying her ship," observed the Zentorian pilot. "She's dancing with the stars." By the end of the precision course, Lisa had moved up to 4th place. More importantly, she had barely used any additional fuel. The other pilots had burned through their reserves fighting against the neutron star's gravity instead of working with it. "Beginning endurance course," the coordinator announced. "Final segment across the Helios system." This was where Lisa had been hoping to make her move. The endurance run was 4 light hours across open space, with no shortcuts and no tricks. It was pure marathon racing. The other ships shot forward again, their pilots pushing their advanced engines to maximum power. But Lisa had learned something important about endurance from her years as a test pilot. It wasn't about going fast at the beginning. She maintained a steady pace, watching as the other ships began to experience problems. The Hive Mind's flower ship started losing pods as they overheated. The Zentorian craft began to flicker as its energy reserves depleted. Fleetwing was still in the lead, but Lisa could see on her sensors that the Screecher ship was running hot. Fleetwing was flying the same way she had won for 50 years, burning bright and fast. 3 hours into the endurance run, the first ship broke down. The Aquatic Empire's pilot had pushed too hard and his engines failed. 2 hours later, the Hive Mind gave up as half their pods went dark. Lisa was now in 3rd place behind Fleetwing and the Zentorian pilot. But she was the only one who wasn't showing signs of stress. That's when she activated her secret weapon. Human spacecraft had something that alien ships didn't: redundancy. Every system had a backup, and every backup had a backup. But more than that, human ships were designed to be modified in flight. Lisa began rerouting power, adjusting her ship's configuration for maximum efficiency. She disabled non-essential systems and redirected their power to her engines. She fine-tuned her course constantly, making tiny adjustments that saved energy over time. It was something that could only be done by a pilot who truly understood their ship, who could think and adapt and improvise. The alien pilots were skilled, but they had always relied on their ship's automatic systems. With 1 hour left in the race, Fleetwing's ship began to slow. 50 years of the same strategy had finally met its match. The Screecher pilot had never learned to conserve energy because she had never needed to. "Human pilot," Fleetwing's voice came over the communication channel. "How are you still accelerating?" "I'm not just accelerating," Lisa replied. "I'm getting better." That was the moment when the galaxy understood something new about humans. They didn't just endure, they improved. Under pressure, in the middle of a challenge, humans became more than they were at the start. Lisa passed Fleetwing with 30 minutes to go. The Zentorian pilot fell behind as his energy reserves finally gave out. In the final stretch, Lisa was alone in space, racing against time and distance and her own limitations. She crossed the finish line not because she was the fastest, but because she was the only pilot who had treated the race like a learning experience. Every turn, every decision, every moment had made her a little bit better. When the results were announced, the galaxy sat in stunned silence for the second time in a week. Winner of the speed competitions, Captain Lisa Park of Earth. Fleetwing's ship limped across the finish line 5 minutes later. When she met Lisa at the finish station, the Screecher pilot looked confused. "I don't understand," Fleetwing said. "I am faster than you. My ship is more advanced. I have 50 years of experience." Lisa smiled. "You are faster. Your ship is more advanced. But I spent the whole race getting better, and you spent it doing the same thing you've always done." "Getting better during the race?" Fleetwing's voice was puzzled. "Is that possible?" "For humans, it's the only way we know how to race." Back on Earth, the celebrations were even bigger than after the strength trials. Humanity had won 2 galactic competitions in a row, and they had done it by being uniquely human. But the biggest challenges were still ahead. The strategy games would test human creativity against the galaxy's greatest minds. And if they survived, the survival gauntlet waited. The aliens were starting to realize that these strange creatures from a small blue planet might be the most dangerous competitors they had ever faced, not because humans were stronger or faster or smarter, but because they never stopped learning, never stopped improving, and never gave up. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when human determination met impossible odds. The strategy complex on Cerebral Prime looked like the inside of a giant brain. Curved walls pulsed with soft light, and floating platforms held game boards that defied human understanding. Some had more dimensions than Earth mathematics could describe. Others seemed to exist in several timelines at once. Dr. Yuki Tanaka sat across from Grand Strategist Zephyr Prime 9 Alpha, trying not to feel overwhelmed. The cerebral being looked like a jellyfish made of pure thought, with tendrils that flickered with calculations moving faster than light. "Welcome, human, to the strategy games." Zephyr Prime's voice appeared directly in Yuki's mind. "For 10,000 years, my people have dominated these competitions. We process information at quantum speeds. We can calculate 1,000,000 moves ahead in the time it takes you to blink." "That sounds impressive," Yuki said politely. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes, someone who had spent her life studying how minds work and how games reveal truth. "You do not seem concerned," Zephyr Prime observed. "Perhaps you do not understand what you face. The game we play is called Cosmic Convergence. It involves managing entire civilizations across multiple universes simultaneously. The rules are so complex that most species spend centuries just learning the basics. Around them, other matches were beginning. The logical collective, beings of pure mathematics, faced off against the quantum twins, entities that existed in probability clouds. The pattern weavers, who saw time as a fabric to be shaped, played against the void thinkers, creatures that found meaning in emptiness. All of them looked at the human with mixture of curiosity and pity. "Shall we begin?" Zephyr Prime asked. The game board materialized between them. It was beautiful and terrifying, showing star systems and trade routes and political connections spanning multiple realities. Yuki could see civilizations rising and falling, technologies developing, wars beginning and ending. The goal is simple, Zephyr Prime explained. Guide your civilization to dominate the cosmic convergence point where all realities meet. You control resources, populations, research, diplomacy, and military forces across 17 different timeline branches. Yuki looked at the board and felt like a child trying to understand calculus. The complexity was staggering. Every decision affected thousands of variables across dozens of realities. "I'll need a moment to understand the rules," she said. "Take all the time you need," Zephyr Prime replied graciously. "Though I should mention that most species require several years of study before they can play competently." Yuki spent 20 minutes examining the board, asking questions, and testing simple moves. Zephyr Prime answered with the patience of a being that experienced time differently than humans. "I think I understand the basics," Yuki finally said. "Excellent. Then let us play." The first game was a slaughter. Zephyr Prime moved with impossible speed and precision. While Yuki was still figuring out how to build a single space station, the cerebral being had optimized trade routes across 7 galaxies. When Yuki tried to develop new technology, Zephyr Prime had already calculated the optimal research paths for the next 1,000 years. "Game 1 complete," Zephyr Prime announced after what felt like hours, but had only been minutes. "Victory, Cerebral Collective." That was educational, Yuki said, studying the final board position. Zephyr Prime's civilization had achieved total cosmic dominance, while hers had barely managed to colonize 3 planets. "Would you like to concede the match?" Zephyr Prime asked kindly. "It is not shameful. The gap between our cognitive abilities is simply too vast to bridge. I'd like to try another game if that's okay." "Of course. Perhaps you will learn something useful." The second game went differently. Not better exactly, but differently. Yuki still lost, but this time she paid attention to something other than winning. She watched how Zephyr Prime played, looking for patterns. The cerebral being's moves were perfect, mathematically optimal, but they were also predictable in their perfection. Game 2 complete. Victory, Cerebral Collective. "One more?" Yuki asked. "Certainly." In the third game, Yuki did something unexpected. Instead of trying to match Zephyr Prime's optimal strategies, she made deliberately suboptimal moves. She built civilizations in inefficient locations, developed technologies in the wrong order, and made diplomatic choices that made no mathematical sense. Zephyr Prime's calculations began to stutter. The perfect strategies were designed to counter logical play, but Yuki wasn't being logical. She was being human. "Your moves are interesting," Zephyr Prime said, sounding puzzled for the first time. "I cannot determine your strategy." "That's because I don't have one," Yuki replied cheerfully. "I'm improvising." Improvising? The concept seemed to cause Zephyr Prime actual confusion. But how can you make optimal decisions without calculating all possibilities? I can't, so I make interesting decisions instead. By the middle of the third game, something strange was happening. Yuki's chaotic, inefficient civilization was causing ripple effects that Zephyr Prime hadn't predicted. Her random decisions created emergent properties that no amount of calculation could foresee. When she lost the third game, Zephyr Prime was no longer certain of victory. Game 3 complete. Victory, Cerebral Collective. "However, I must note that your civilization survived far longer than anticipated." "Fourth game?" Yuki asked. This time, she did something even more radical. She started changing the rules. Not cheating exactly. But cosmic convergence was such a complex game that it had loopholes and emergent properties that even its creators hadn't foreseen. Yuki began exploiting these, turning the game from pure strategy into something closer to jazz improvisation. She used diplomatic protocols to create feedback loops that generated extra resources. She found ways to make her failures strengthen her position. Most importantly, she began treating the game not as a competition to be won, but as a system to be explored. "What are you doing?" Zephyr Prime asked as Yuki's civilization began exhibiting behaviors that weren't supposed to be possible. "I'm playing jazz," Yuki said. "In jazz, you don't just follow the music. You create new music while you're playing. That is not how games work. It's how human games work." For the first time in its billion-year existence, Zephyr Prime experienced something it had never felt before: uncertainty. The human wasn't just playing the game. She was changing it in real time, creating new possibilities faster than even quantum calculations could predict. The fourth game ended in something that had never happened in strategy games history: a draw. Neither player had achieved cosmic dominance because the game itself had evolved beyond its original parameters. "This is unprecedented," Zephyr Prime said, its mental voice shaking. "I do not understand what occurred." "You played perfectly," Yuki explained. "But I played creatively. Perfect and creative are two different things." "Different how?" "Perfect means finding the best answer to the question. Creative means changing the question." The fifth and final game was played before an audience of every strategic mind in the galaxy. The logical collective, the pattern weavers, the void thinkers, all of them watched as the human sat down to face the greatest strategic intellect in known space. This time, Yuki played with full confidence. She had learned Zephyr Prime's patterns, understood the game's deep structure, and most importantly, she had figured out how to be human in a galaxy that valued only perfection. She didn't try to calculate optimal moves. Instead, she made interesting moves, creative moves, moves that created new possibilities rather than selecting from existing ones. She turned cosmic convergence from a game of perfect information into a game of imagination. When Zephyr Prime made the mathematically optimal choice, Yuki responded with something no computer could predict: intuition. When the cerebral being calculated the future, Yuki created a different future. The game lasted for hours. Civilizations rose and fell, realities shifted and merged, and slowly, impossibly, the humans' chaotic civilization began to thrive in ways that defied all logic. "I do not understand," Zephyr Prime said as the game reached its climax. "Your civilization should have collapsed hours ago. Your decisions are inefficient, your strategies are illogical, your resource management is suboptimal. But my people are happy," Yuki pointed out. "And happiness, it turns out, is a resource you never learn to calculate." In the end, Yuki won not by dominating the cosmic convergence point, but by convincing the other civilizations to share it. She had turned a game of conquest into a game of cooperation, competition into collaboration. "Game 5 complete," Zephyr Prime announced in a voice that sounded stunned. "Victory! Human!" The audience of strategic minds sat in absolute silence. They had just watched their fundamental assumptions about intelligence and strategy crumble before their eyes. "How?" Zephyr Prime asked. "How did you defeat calculations that process faster than light?" Yuki smiled. "You think faster than me, that's true. But I think differently than you, and sometimes different beats faster." "Different how?" "You were playing the game that exists. I was playing the game that could exist. The first requires perfect calculation. The second requires imagination." As news of the victory spread across the galaxy, beings that had ruled through pure intellect for millennia found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about intelligence. Nightmare World lived up to its name. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the drop zone, looking down at a planet that seemed designed by something that hated life itself. The sky shifted between sickly yellow and deep purple. The ground below writhed with creatures that had too many teeth and not enough eyes. "Are you certain about this?" asked Coordinator Zixith. Even the insectoid leader of the Galactic Council seemed nervous. In 50,000 years, only 12 species have survived the survival gauntlet. Most quit within the first hour. Elena checked her equipment one more time. She carried only basic supplies, water purification tablets, a multi-tool, emergency, rations, and a medical kit. The rules allowed no advanced technology, no weapons, no communication devices. "I'm ready," she said. Around her, the other competitors made final preparations. There were only 8 this time. Most species had declined to even attempt the gauntlet after watching the humans win 3 competitions in a row. The Vorthak warrior, Bloodfang Krextar, stood in full ceremonial armor. He was War Chief Graktor's own son, sent to restore his people's honor. The crystalline Zentaurian, Shard of Pain, flickered with nervous energy. 3 hive mind fragments buzzed together, trying to maintain their collective connection. 72 hours, Zixeth announced. Survive that long on Nightmare World, and you will be declared champions of the survival gauntlet. The planet will test your strength, your speed, your intelligence, and most importantly, your will to live. What about working together? Elena asked. The question surprised everyone. Zixeth's mandibles clicked in confusion. Working together? This is a survival competition. There can be only one winner. The rules say survive for 72 hours, Elena pointed out. They don't say anything about not helping each other. No one has ever... Why would you help your competitors? Elena smiled. Because that's what humans do. The dropships release their passengers across different parts of Nightmare World. Elena landed in a forest where the trees grew downward from floating islands, their roots reaching toward the ground like grasping fingers. The gravity here was wrong, fluctuating between crushing weight and weightless floating. She had studied survival videos from every environment on Earth: Arctic cold, desert heat, jungle humidity, ocean storms, high mountains, and deep caves. But nothing had prepared her for a world where the environment itself seemed actively malicious. The first challenge came within minutes. The ground beneath her feet began to dissolve, turning into acid that ate through her boots. Elena jumped to a floating tree root, then swung from root to root like a monkey, using techniques she had learned from jungle survival experts. Her radio crackled. The rules allowed emergency communication, but only to report deaths or withdrawals. "This is Bloodfang Krextar," came a strained voice. "I am having difficulties. The gravity keeps changing, and my armor is too heavy." Elena could see the Vorthak warrior in the distance, struggling as his ceremonial armor became a death trap in the fluctuating gravity. "This is Elena," she said, into her radio. "Krextar, can you hear me?" "Human? Why are you speaking to me?" "Because you need help. I'm coming to you." "This is a competition. You should leave me to fail." "That's not how humans compete." Elena swung through the floating forest, following the sound of Krextar's struggles. She found him trapped under his own armor as gravity fluctuated wildly. Without his 4-armed strength to lift the ceremonial plates, he was helpless. "Let me help," Elena said, dropping down beside him. "You should let me die and eliminate a competitor." "I should, but I won't." Elena began working on his armor straps. "My species believes that being strong means helping others become strong too." Together, they managed to remove the heaviest pieces of Krextar's armor. The Vorthak warrior looked strange without his traditional protection, but he could move freely in the changing gravity. "Why?" he asked. "Why help an enemy?" "You're not my enemy," Elena said. "You're just someone who needs help." Over the radio, they heard other voices. Shard of Pain was lost in a maze of crystal formations that interfered with his energy matrix. The hive mind fragments were separated and losing their connection to each other. "We could help them too," Elena suggested. Krextar looked at her with his 4 eyes. "This is not how competitions work. It's how human competitions work." By the end of the first day, something unprecedented was happening. Elena and Krextar had found the separated hive mind fragments and helped them reconnect. They had guided Shard of Pain out of the crystal maze. They had shared food with a competitor from the aquatic empire whose water recycling system had failed. "This is highly irregular," came Zixith's voice over the emergency channel. "Competitors are not supposed to assist each other." "The rules don't forbid it," Elena pointed out. "They just say we have to survive." The second day brought worse challenges. The planet's weather included acid rain, plasma storms, and snow that burned like fire. Predators emerged from the ground and sky, creatures designed to hunt the galaxy's most dangerous species. Elena used every survival technique she had ever learned. When the acid rain came, she showed the others how to build shelters from the planet's own materials. When plasma storms struck, she taught them to read the warning signs and find safe ground. Most importantly, she did something that no competitor had ever done before. She shared hope. "This world is trying to break us," she told the group as they huddled in a cave during a particularly bad storm. "It wants us to give up, to turn on each other, to become as cruel as it is." "Perhaps we should," suggested one of the hive mind fragments. "This cooperation is not natural." "For humans, cooperation is the most natural thing in the world," Elena replied. "We survived ice ages and plagues and wars, not by being the strongest individuals, but by taking care of each other." Krextar nodded slowly. "On my world, we teach that strength comes from conquest, but perhaps there are different kinds of strength." By the third day, the group had developed something that had never existed in the survival gauntlet: genuine friendship. They protected each other, shared resources, and most importantly, refused to let anyone give up. When the aquatic competitor's environmental suit failed completely, they worked together to modify Elena's water purification tablets to keep him alive. When Shard of Pain's energy began to fade, they found ways to reflect and focus light to recharge him. 18 hours remaining," Zixth announced over the radio. He sounded confused. "All competitors are still active. This has never happened before." "That's because they've never competed with humans before," Elena said. "The final challenges were the worst yet. The planet threw everything it had at them. Gravity storms that could crush bones, predators the size of buildings, environmental hazards that shifted faster than thought. But the group had learned to work as a team. When Elena was trapped by a gravity storm, Krextar used his natural strength to pull her free. When predators attacked, they fought as one unit, covering each other's weaknesses and amplifying each other's strengths. 6 hours remaining," Zixith announced. "I must note that this is the longest any group of competitors has survived simultaneously." "We're not just surviving," Elena said. "We're thriving." And it was true. Despite the impossible conditions, despite the planet's best efforts to break them, the mixed species team had not only survived, but had become something new. They had become friends. 1 hour remaining, came the final announcement. The group gathered on a hilltop as Nightmare World made its last attempt to defeat them. The sky rained fire, the ground split open to reveal rivers of lava, and creatures of living shadow emerged from every crevice. They stood together, backs to each other, protecting the group as a whole rather than themselves as individuals. 30 minutes remaining. The attacks intensified. But so did their cooperation. 10 minutes remaining. They were exhausted, injured, and pushed beyond all limits. But they were together. Time completed. Survival gauntlet concluded. The rescue ships arrived to find something that had never been seen before. All competitors still alive, all of them helping each other, all of them changed by the experience. "This is impossible," Zixth said as they were transported back to the Federation station. The survival gauntlet is designed to test individual will to live. It is not meant to be enjoyable. "We made it enjoyable," Elena said. "Humans have a saying, shared joy is doubled, shared sorrow is halved." Krextar nodded. "I have learned something on this world. True strength is not conquering others. True strength is lifting others up. The hive mind fragments spoke in harmony. Individual survival is meaningless. Group survival creates meaning. Shard of pain flickered with new colors. Cooperation generates energy that pure competition cannot produce. Back in the Federation, council chambers, the leaders of the galaxy sat in stunned silence. Humanity had not just won all 5 competitions, they had fundamentally changed what competition meant. "What do we do now?" asked one council member. "They have proven themselves, but they have also proven that our entire system of measurement is flawed." Elena stood before the council, still wearing her torn survival gear. "You could try learning from us, instead of just competing with us." "Learning what?" "That being the best isn't about beating everyone else. It's about helping everyone become their best." Zixith leaned forward with all 4 arms. "You propose.